Perfect. And also, just to let you know, we have live transcription available for this session. So if you don't automatically see the captions on the bottom, you can hit the live transcript button on the bottom of your Zoom screen to enable that feature. So welcome to our final session of Tuesday Talks with Alumni series, our inaugural series this academic year. Thank you for joining us today. I know some of you have been with us from the beginning, and maybe a number of you are joining us for the first time. Just to give a quick introduction of myself, I'm Jillian Moise. I'm a PhD candidate in sociology at UC Davis. I also serve as the graduate student advisor to the Dean and Chancellor. And I will definitely make sure to drop my email at some point in the chat so you have access to that if you have any questions. Just to talk a little bit about the series, this Tuesday Talks with Alumni series was developed as part of my GSADC project in collaboration with key graduate studies staff, including Jessica Failer-Ward, who's joining us on the call today as well. And this was a spring quarter series that's designed to provide graduate students an opportunity to informally connect with advanced degree alumni who have successfully navigated graduate school at UC Davis and who come from diverse academic fields and professional backgrounds. So each alum throughout the series has shared their experiences and personal perspectives on a professional development topic of their choosing. And so, as I mentioned earlier, today is our final session, and you will be able to access all of the recordings at our Tuesday Talks with Alumni website, which I will also make sure to drop in the chat in a moment. And just before I introduce our guest speaker for today, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. So we'll just ask during the actual talk and presentation if you can remember to keep your mics muted. And then after the talk, we'll have between 15 and 20 minutes for questions. And at that point, you can use the raise hand function and answer your question or ask your question out loud, or type them in the chat and I can read the question out loud. So without further delay, I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, who will be offering a presentation on establishing your professional profile. Sarah Flores works to advance U.S. foreign policy goals through the implementation of environmental cooperation programs with free trade agreement partners. Sarah's work focuses on Latin America, where she's helped advance priorities to improve solid waste management, build capacity to combat wildlife trafficking, enhance public participation in environmental decision, and strengthening environmental governance. She leverages prior experience in federal government, state government, and the nonprofit sector. Sarah is a solutions-oriented professional who is keen on working cooperatively and supporting diversity and inclusion in her work. She is passionate about mentoring and supporting the professional advancement of early career professionals. She served as a mentor for the University of California, Washington Program Mentorship Program, and a reviewer and interviewer for the California Sea Grant Program. And if I may quickly add, Sarah also serves as a mentor in our alumni mentoring program that we also launched this year. Sarah earned both of her Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees in geology from the University of California, Davis. Please help me in welcoming Sarah Flores.
Thank you, Jillian. Hi, everybody. I am in Washington, D.C. currently, so a few hours ahead of you all. I'm so delighted to be here, and I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to share some time with you today. So as Jillian mentioned, my professional trajectory has meandered, and I've now refined the way that I talk about myself professionally so many times because historically I've worn hats in environmental issues, ocean issues, analysis, working in the nonprofit sector. So I have a little bit of experience in talking about myself and helping peers and other mentees and how they talk about themselves. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I just wanted to let you know that something that I want to do in this time that we have is for this to not just be me like a head on a screen speaking at all of you, but that hopefully this is a discussion of sorts. So feel free to use that chat, type in comments or questions. I'll use that also to just prompt you to give me some ideas or share some of your thoughts along the way, just to try to make it a little bit more lively and interactive. So I'll go ahead and let's start now. So can you guys just type in, or can you all just type in the chat and let me know why you joined today. So, and I'll go ahead and I'll read some of those. Don't everybody type in at the same time. Okay, I'm truly hurt. Nobody's typing here, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say, okay, thank you, Lainey. Hoping to spruce up my LinkedIn and CV, recommendations for LinkedIn and social media, to get name out for federal positions. Yes, yes, yes. Graduation is coming up soon, and I have an interest in working in government. Needing to understanding the need to establish a professional profile. Yes, that's, of course, we'll cover that today. Explore careers outside of academia and hoping to build my presence in the community. Absolutely, all of these things. So yeah, thank you so much. This is super helpful. Yeah, and professional profiles, just, you know, they're a snapshot of what you bring forward to the world professionally. So let's go ahead, Jillian, if you can please start sharing the presentation. I see interdisciplinary research, and I want to advise on how to present myself in different settings. Absolutely, especially because interdisciplinary research, you have your hand in several pies, so you want to make sure that you craft good language to communicate all of that. All right, thanks, Jillian. Yeah, so can we go ahead and go to the next slide? Thank you. So just want to let you know what we'll cover today. We'll start with the first question. What is a professional profile? You know, there was a point in my career when I didn't know what a professional profile was. We'll then cover where professional profiles used, tips for developing a professional profile. Then the question, when should you start one? Today, right now. Let's go ahead and launch in. And then managing and updating your professional profile. So how do you know, the care and feeding for professional profiles. Next slide, please. So in doing my research, I found this fantastic definition from Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I have to give them a shout out. And this is, I think, by far the best definition I found that I think really encompasses all of the elements. So it is a professional profile is a brief emphasis on that word, summary. So of your skills, strengths, and experiences. It should also convey what you are seeking or what you have to offer to the person reading it. I really like this definition because it has sort of everything. I'd like to add the text in red, that it should also have something about your education, any fellowships or scholarships received, and any key achievements. And we'll parse this out as we move on. But yeah, just to point out, you know, it's a snapshot. It has everything that you have to offer professionally. And it should also, if you're looking for an internship, a job opportunity, part-time, full-time, it should also mention that too. So does anybody already have one? Type yes, no, maybe in the chat. Not really. LOL, yeah, nope. Okay, you're in the right place. I hope that to those of you that don't have one, you come out with some functional working draft that then you can workshop in with your colleagues or friends. Yes, from LinkedIn account, but hoping to refine and improve. Okay, so there's a good mix in here. Thank you all. All right, next slide. So where professional profiles used, I saw a handful of you kind of comment on this, right? So CV, resume, LinkedIn, even Twitter, lab web pages. So if you work in a laboratory and your researcher has a lab page and there's an opportunity for you to put a profile, that's exactly where your professional profile would go. Or if you are very advanced and have your own web page, your professional profile should be there. So I want to just show you some examples. Jillian, can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So this is a good friend of mine, Dr. Kelly Grogan. She's an associate professor and graduate coordinator at the University of Florida. and she works in food and resource economics. So I really like the way that she describes her work, and I think this is a fantastic example of a professional profile, in an academic setting. So I'll go ahead and I'll just read it for you. Dr. Gervin's research interests include bioeconomic modeling, economically optimal pest control across time and space, adoption of sustainable agricultural practices, and natural resource economics in general. So she starts off with mentioning her title and having the list, a very specific list of all of her research interests. Then she says she received her MS and PhD in agricultural economics from the University of California, Davis, and her BA in economics and environmental studies from Dartmouth College. She received the University of Florida Roche Teaching Fellowship and the Council on Food, Agriculture, and Resource Economics Early Career Professional Leadership Award. So perfect. She tells us her academic background, and she also tells us something about her fellowships and awards and achievements. So this is just like a really great example of a professional profile in an academic setting. So having just seen this here, can you type in the chat a serial list of 2 to 3 professional interests that you have, that you think, when I think of myself as a professional, as a researcher, as a graduate student, these are some of the things that I'd like people to take away from reading a professional profile. Skill sets. Can we parse that out a little bit more? So is that public speaking? Is that communicating technical information to lay audiences? Is that programming in R? Okay, I'm seeing also conservation biology and sustainable agriculture, international development, energy and economic growth, game theory and quantum computing. These are great. These are really great examples. Cutting edge neuroimaging research on long-term memory formation. That is beautiful. Okay, that sounds good. All right, next slide, please. So now we're moving on to a different place where we might find professional profiles, LinkedIn. So this is from a former colleague of mine, Saskia. She is now the head of sustainability at Rothy's. I really like her profile. I don't want to read all of it, but just to recap for you, she's an environmental scientist. She talks about she has over a decade of experience in sustainable manufacturing and design. I'm not sure if that is the case for everybody here, that they can say they have, decades worth of experience in the space, but I just want to show you this so you know in time where you might go and where you might take your professional profile. She then defines a little bit or explains for her audience what Rothy's does. It's a shoe company, and she says it's a lifestyle brand best known for creating stylish, comfortable shoes from recycled plastic water bottles. So I wanted to highlight that because it's super important if you say that you work in a specific department or a lab, or you're part of a research initiative. If you don't think that an audience outside of your laboratory or your immediate space might know what that is, then you'd have to use some words or use a small phrase to explain that and provide context for everybody else. She continues on. She talks about specifically what she does to minimize environmental impact of the supply chain at her current position. And towards the end, she talks about what she did in a previous position. So again, I think from here, the takeaway for LinkedIn is that LinkedIn is a little bit more of a general audience. So feel free to provide, as where in academia, you might stick a little bit more with jargon or more technical language. In LinkedIn, you are not only speaking to your peers in your space, but you're speaking to a broader audience. So try to keep it a little bit broader. Try to explain any acronyms or a lab or a place or an office or division where you work. Another example of that is I used to work, I used to work at the California Ocean Protection Council, and people never knew that was a state agency. So I would always, have to kind of explain that in another part of the sentence. So from looking at Saskia's profile, what are some of the words that pop out at you that describe her expertise or experience? Sustainability specialist, absolutely. Sustainable manufacturing and design. Sustainability initiatives. Great. So, I mean, those are really three great examples. And I think if I were to reach out to her right now and ask her, what do you think people should take away from your LinkedIn profile? She would agree that sustainability is a huge, it's an important aspect of hers. So, okay, I want to show you another example. So, Jillian, next slide, please. So this is Caroline. Caroline was a recent former intern at my office at the Department of State. Caroline is in a very different professional space than Saskia. She does not have 10 years of experience. So I want to show you another example of a different way to approach a professional profile, even if you don't have a ton of work experience. And I think that's, when speaking to mentees, that's one of the biggest sort of hesitations that I notice when writing a professional profile, that, that fear of, I don't have a lot to showcase. I don't have a lot of work experience. Even if that is the case, you still have something that you're building towards. You still have something that you're studying. You still have passions. You still have academic and professional interests. So I want to go ahead and read a little bit of Caroline's for us to get a sense. So she starts out, I'm a student at American University School of International Service, majoring in international studies with a concentration in environmental sustainability, global health, and development, and minoring in environmental science. So in the very least, you can talk about where you're studying and what your major is, and or in this case, if graduate students, what your research is about, what are some of your research interests, and what is your degree in. I'll continue. She says, I'm interested in natural resource management and land and labor rights, environmental health and safety, and agroecology. So she takes it from a very big place, and then she starts narrowing it down. More specific topics. She then continues, I have a strong background in public speaking, project management, and research. My most recent research projects have been a video essay on queer representation in training film, a multimedia group project on crop rotation in Costa Rica, and a comparative case study of EPA responses to American anti-pesticide movements. So something I really love about this professional profile is that, while she does not have a ton of work experience, she's able to illustrate for us different projects and different projects that she's contributed to and different initiatives that she's worked on. So from this, I get that she is she's working on international issues. She's interested in environmental issues, and while it seems like she's still kind of trying to figure out her niche, she's still been able to pursue and tackle a number of opportunities. So she's very driven, she's very motivated, and so this is just another example of two ends of the spectrum, if you will. A professional with tons of years of experience and somebody who's just starting out in their career, but they're trying to demonstrate all of the good things that they've worked on. So moving on from LinkedIn, I now want to go into Twitter. So I'm going to highlight Malala, who everybody knows Malala. So Twitter is a little bit of a different space. As you all know, it's more succinct. It's even more broad than LinkedIn and way less technical, because this is just for the whole world. This is a place where you can then mention fellowships or notable awards. You have now an opportunity to tag affiliations. So you can say, earning my degree at UC Davis, or if you have a fellowship or a scholarship and they happen to have a Twitter account, then you can mention their handle. And then you can use some acronyms that your peers understand, that people within your discipline might understand. And then LinkedIn is a little, Twitter is a little bit different because you can actually add some personal details, whereas I, don't necessarily think that would be very appropriate for LinkedIn. So Malala, I hope everybody knows this wonderful person. I'm going to read her small professional profile. Advocate for girls' education and women's equality. She's a UN Messenger of Peace, Nobel Laureate 2014, and founder of at Malala Fund. And so I want to show you now one last example. This is my another friend and colleague, Chris Williams. So he starts off with his personal details, right? So he's a husband and a twin dad. He's a budding gardener, but also he's a STEM educator. So to those of you on here, I'm sure you all know, but that's science, technology, engineering, and math. But I just want to note that he's using that acronym. He doesn't have to define it, and he's intending on connecting with a group of his peers. He's at National Museum for African American History and Culture, if I get that acronym right. He was a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow. He worked at the National Science Foundation, so that's NSF, which I hope that some of you, or half of you at least, are aware. And he is the director of a program that he has started. He's also something that I think he's very passionate about. It's Black in STEM. He uses that hashtag. So in a very small amount of space, I think Chris, what he does really well here is he's very efficient about telling you a number of things that he's interested in, but then they all connect in some way, right? So STEM education, Black in STEM, doing outreach, working on museum outreach and issues. So by looking at this summary, I think that Chris does a really good job at, and I'm taking it back here to that original definition that we saw, that this is a brief summary of some of his skills, strengths, and key experiences. In it has what he has to offer. Okay, so I'm seeing a question here from Jean. Any recommendations on expanding the acronyms in Twitter, i.e. I wouldn't have known what STPF was in triple STPF? That's a really good question. I think if I were doing this if I were to look at his LinkedIn, I'm sure he's probably spelled it out. Same if he decided to go back to academia, he would spell all of that out. In the space where he works and I work and where we come from, we know exactly what STPF means. And I think then he doesn't expand on it for two reasons. One, because he's not, the audience he's trying to connect with, he's not trying to define it. And two, if you were to click on that handle, it would take you to the program page, and then you would be able to see Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. So I think those are the two reasons. But thank you for asking that question. That's important. So Jillian, next slide, please. Okay, so now continuing on with where our professional profiles used, and again, I am borrowing from this fantastic definition from Hamline University. The professional profile can be used as your elevator speech. If you don't know what that is, ask me in the chat and I'll explain. The in-person introduction that serves as a starting point to networking at job fairs or professional gatherings. Or it can be used in LinkedIn profile or other written materials to garner interest in what you have to offer in a professional capacity. So I know we just reviewed a number of examples and places where professional profiles are used, and I hope that those really illustrate the spirit of this definition here. So not only can you use them as an elevator speech or LinkedIn, but I'd like to add my definition at the bottom, including academic or research web pages, as we mentioned, maybe lab groups. At the top of your resume, and I know somebody commented that they had that in their CV. LinkedIn and Twitter, as we saw, And honestly, just as a statement that you have in your back pocket for job fairs or for networking events. I know networking is another beast, and there was another session about that, I believe. But this is professional profiles just give you an opportunity to really think about what do you bring to the table professionally? What are your experiences? Where are you trying to go? And have a prepared, thoughtful way of conveying that, whether in writing or whether if you meet somebody and they kind of want to know a little bit about a little bit more about what you have to offer. I underline starting point here because don't feel that you have to put everything in your professional profile. This is just think about it as the beginning of a conversation, an introduction, as the as like the first, as the abstract. I like hate to use like technical words, but as the abstract to who you are professionally. Okay, so next slide, please. So now that we know everything about professional profiles, I want to discuss some tips for developing a professional profile. So the first one is keep it brief. Again, as I mentioned, this is an introduction. It's not the full conversation. So don't feel anxious to fit in everything that you've done and everything that you're excited about. To that end, think of your audience, and I challenge you to think, what is your goal? So if your audience is, on LinkedIn and you just, as I saw some of the comments in the chat, they're kind of to get feelers on job opportunities, or just to get somebody, the rest of the world to know who you are and for you to try to build a presence, then maybe you want to keep it a little bit broad. If you know that you want to, there's that one thing that you want to go down this path and you want to learn more about and you want to work in that space, then feel free to make it a little bit more technical and a little bit more focused so that others who may come across your professional profile can connect and say, okay, this person wants to work on electron microscopy and I want to connect with them. Also think about what your goal is. So if you are, trying to secure a summer internship, a fall internship, or a fellowship, or your next career move, then that's something that you could add to your professional profile, and we'll work on that in a little bit in a few minutes. Also highlight relevant skills, strengths, experiences, and or achievements. So this is from earlier on in that definition that I shared. I underline relevant because I think for some of you this may ring true. You might have a number of professional and academic passions and curiosities that you want to explore. That certainly was the case for me. I started off as a geology major. I wanted to be a professor, and then I wanted to work in public policy, and then I worked a little bit in communications, and then in the nonprofit sector. My trajectory is in no way, shape, or form linear, but in different points and turns in my career, I thought about, what am I looking for? And at that, at those points, if I was looking for a more an opportunity to work in doing more writing or doing more analysis, then I would highlight the relevant skills, strengths, experiences, and achievements, so that somebody who is reading my professional profile, or somebody that I spoke to at a professional opportunity, would then, something would go off in their head and say, okay, this is the lady for the job. So be really conscious of not adding like, everything but the kitchen sink with all of the wonderful skills and experiences that you've done. Also be specific. Use your words carefully. So for that, I would caution, a statement like motivated graduate student looking for my next opportunity, to work in a lab, and analysis and writing is incredibly broad. So when I say be specific and use your words carefully, that is just to help you refine the message that you're trying to communicate and what you're looking for, so that somebody else who's reading it knows exactly what you're about, what you bring to the table, and what you're looking for. This optional bullet point include a professional objective. this is what you're seeking, you can just build it in right into the professional statement, and you can lead with it at the top, or you can put it at the bottom. And again, as I mentioned, if that's an internship or fellowship or part-time or full-time employment, please say so. Somebody might be looking for your skills and abilities, and might be looking for somebody to come in and work for the amount of time that you're looking for. So that's incredibly helpful. It helps to connect those bridges for others. Professional profiles can also be written in the first or the third person. So as you saw in the examples, you could say Dr. So-and-so works on, X, Y, and Z, or you can say my research interests are X, Y, and Z. And then at the end, always ask others to read your statement. I think we think that we know how to communicate what we are about, what we bring to the table, but sometimes we are too close to ourselves, and then we just use too many words, and we include statements that aren't clear. And so having somebody else just kind of have an opportunity to look at your work and check your statement and ask you questions. Did you mean to come out as a professional who wants to, brand him or herself as a sustainability professional? And then you might say, oh no, not at all. Then you might go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how do I change this so that I'm really communicating what I want to say about myself? I would say a really good a good exercise might be put something on paper, share it with people from your class, your lab group, a professor. If you're going into academia, share it from somebody who's outside of academia. If you're looking for a non-academic job, and say, hey, when you read this, what are some of the top, words that come to mind about this professional? Okay, so in the spirit of me talking so much about how to craft one, I just want to share one more example. So I know Jillian read my bio in the beginning. And my bio is one thing, and my professional profile is another thing. So I'm gonna read mine. I'm an environmental cooperation professional working to advance U.S. foreign policy goals with partners in Latin America, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. I'm passionate about promoting public participation in environmental decision making, strengthening environmental governance, collaborating with relevant stakeholders, and mobilizing efforts and resources to tackle pressing environmental priorities. Solutions-oriented professional who is thoughtful about diversity and inclusion in her work. So it's along the lines of what you heard in the bio, and just to look a little bit under the hood of why I chose the words that I chose in this particular example. In the space that I work in, something that I want people to come away with when they learn about me is that I specialize with working with countries and governments and partners in Latin America. I provide an example and a specific list of the countries that I work with. I think the word environment or environmental or some permutation of that word is just plastered all over this statement. That's something that I want people to come away with. I provide some examples of what that kind of work is, because the environment is incredibly broad. So something that I want to communicate is that I do a lot of work that is people focused or people centered. So that's collaborating, stakeholders, solutions oriented. That means like working with others and making sure that the goals are met. And I think something that is important to me about my work is that I include diversity. Sorry for the redundant statement here, but I include diversity and inclusion in my work. That's something that I take seriously and that I try to imbue into all of the projects that are under my care. So, okay, let's see. So now that I've provided, I hope, a primer or an illustration and some examples of professional profiles, let's start the workshop time. So Jillian, next slide, please. Okay, so to those of you that have one, that's great, pull it up. I hope you have it handy. To those of you that don't have one, this is going to be an opportunity for us to just put something on paper. It doesn't have to be good. Don't be scared. So let's see. I just want to share some start potential examples. So I'll read the three of them. The first one is, I am a third-year PhD student in the Department of Environmental Science at that should be like at UCD or the University of California, Davis. My research project deals with water pollutants in blah, blah, blah. So you can start off with, what year you're in, what degree you're getting, the department, and then launch into your research. Another example is first year computer science master's student seeking a summer internship in cybersecurity. I have experience with blah, blah, blah. So again, this is where I'd mentioned earlier, you can put at the top of your professional profile what it is that you're looking for. And then the third example is PhD candidate in economics with 3 years experience in performing statistical modeling analysis on blah, blah, blah. Some of you may have worked prior to going to grad school. So you want to make sure that that experience counts. You want to make sure that you highlight it. So if you have some relevant experience prior to working, prior to grad school, go ahead and include it. Or even, as a PhD candidate, you've probably now done a ton of work in the first few years of your school. So you want to make sure that you highlight that for people. So these are just 3 different approaches. So now this is I want to put somebody in the hot seat. Can somebody share an example of how they would start one? And in a few moments, I will provide some time to work on one. But before we actually have writing time, I just want to see if somebody can chime in with an example. Okay, while somebody is crafting that first sentence, which again does not have to be good. This is a friendly space here. We'll go ahead and look at the next slide. So add-ons in the body of your professional profile. So I kind of just parsed out those elements that were really critical and including in a professional profile. The first one is skills. So you could be a programmer, a lecturer, a public speaker. You could work in data analysis. Again, use of electron microscope. Strengths, you can be detail oriented. You can have the ability to communicate technical information to broad audiences. Experiences, I know you all have a ton to pull from. So maybe you did a field season in the Bahamas. You deployed a survey. In terms of fellowships and scholarships, these are just good sentences or examples to maybe lead into that. So you were awarded the blah, blah, blah fellowship, or you earned the presidential management blah, 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 or you received the award for something or other. And then in terms of key achievements, this is really critical. This is where if you don't have a ton of professional experience, and even if you do, you want to make sure that you can illustrate for somebody else just how amazing you are. So for instance, you can say you successfully installed an air quality sensor in a remote region of, Peru. Or provided analysis on educational outcomes of XYZ to feed into a larger study about Latinx student performance in classrooms. So even if you don't have a ton to pull from, go ahead and just try to figure out what is something really cool, really special that I've done that my family would be really proud of, and try to figure out how to phrase it in a way where you can include it in your professional profile, and it really just gives an example or a sense of who you are as a professional and what you bring to the table. I think before I move on, just on this point, I'd like to say in general, I think, when I have an opportunity to work with undergrad and graduate students, I feel that there's this fear of I haven't done enough, and, I'm just a student, or I'm just in my first or second year. And you have to remember that you are in such a small minority of the population that is in undergrad or grad school, working in a narrower field and a niche thing. And at some point you're one of a handful of people in the world doing what you're doing. So I know you are surrounded by your peers, and you're surrounded by this university and academic setting, but broader than that, think about how special and awesome it is, all the work is that you are doing because you are now in like a select club of people conducting your work. So communicate that to the rest of the world. So I'm seeing some examples here. This is amazing. Okay. I'm not going to read them all. I'm sure you all are looking at this, and I hope this is helpful for the rest of you. If you're stuck, that you get some ideas. I'm going to read one. I'm a second-year master's student in the energy graduate group with research focused on biodiesel and international energy technologies. Beautiful. I get a very quickly a clear sense of what you're doing. Another one from Brittany. I'm a PhD candidate in the graduate group in nutritional biology, researching the psychological effects and academic impacts of food insecurity on college students. Excellent, like get to the point. I'm seeing some other really good examples. Here I'm looking at one, have been awarded multiple awards and fellowships, the latest for Best Junior Investigator and Presentation Award from the UC Davis Cancer Comprehensive Center in 2019 and the Ellen Gold Fellowship. These are amazing. I would just tighten the language. You can say recipient of the UC Davis Cancer of the Best Junior Investigator Presentation Award from the UC Davis ... and the Ellen Gold Fellowship. You don't have to name the years. And you can just make it a little bit tighter, but that's amazing. I feel so humbled being among so many wonderful and accomplished people. Okay, so next slide, Jillian. So I want to give you an opportunity to write. And in the meantime, I want to be able to answer some questions if they come up. I know, writing, you might want to focus on that, and others, if you just have immediate questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. And then I just have one more slide, and then we can move on to wrapping it up. I'm looking at another one here. First year viticulture and enology graduate student with over 15 years of wine industry experience, looking to connect with other wine growers and winemakers, interested in restorative agriculture in vineyards and low environmental impact processes for wine production. That is excellent. I would probably break it up at some point, but this is perfect. You have so much experience, and I love that it's you're putting it forward. Okay. So now, while people type or while people work, I'll just go over the last slide. So managing and updating your professional profile. So this is like care and feeding, right? So do this often, I would say, and I think even beyond your professional profile, I would say go ahead and do this for your CV and for your resume. Do it every year, like, or do it whenever the school year ends, or on Labor Day, like, choose like a time in the year that comes every year, and just nose to the grindstone and update your work. I often forget what it is that I've done professionally in a year, so I actually do this twice a year. I have to think back to like, okay, what are all the crazy things that have happened at work that I've like like worked and troubleshooted and moved forward or whatever, so then I can continue to remember to include those. Especially update your professional profile when looking for internships, fellowships, or jobs, so that you can communicate with others that you are available to provide your service and your work. When you complete an academic program, I've seen this in resumes before, where it's like, so I know somebody just graduated and they have like just finishing up my 4th year, and I'm like, I know you graduated already. Like, make sure you update that, or like the graduation year. So that's like milestone. Update all my stuff. And when you change the focus of what you're seeking, and I mean that in two ways. So one of them would be if you're looking for an internship, if you're looking for a fellowship, if you're looking for a short-term thing, a part-time thing, a long-term thing, a forever thing, make sure that you update it. And also, I think as everyone goes through not everyone, but certainly a lot of people, as they go through their graduate program, you might think that you want to work on this and in this particular area and in this part of academia, and then maybe that changes to something else, or maybe you now want to work in a different, not in academia anymore, and you want to work in the nonprofit sector, or you want to work in consulting. So as you meander and as you grow and as you inform yourself a little bit more about where you want to take your career, you want to make sure that your professional profile reflects that and reflects those changes, and and kind of grows and documents, how you're, where you want to take your career next. So I think, Jillian, that like brings us to the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for an excellent presentation. That was really engaging and provided a lot of practical information. So we have time for questions that folks might have. You can either, type it in the chat and I will, be sure to monitor that, or unmute or raise your hand and then unmute yourself. And I can call on you if you do that. So let's see if we have.
I have a question. Yeah, I see one. It says, I have a question. If I plan to apply for an independent PI position in an academic setting in 1 year, should I put it in the first sentence of the profile? That's a really good question. I would say because I'm not in academia, I don't want to give you the wrong information. So if there's an advisor or a mentor or somebody that you trust in your professional space, just ask them. And in fact, this would be like a perfect networking opportunity with a university that you're looking to potentially apply to or work in, and just reach out to somebody who's, who works in that department and say, hey, I just want to, learn a little bit more about your department and your hiring practices. And, would you have like 20-minute coffee chat with me? I want to know a little bit more about how I should approach the application process. And you can ask your question, and then now you have like a buddy in that space that you want to apply to. I hope I answered that as best as possible.
Thank you. Other questions folks might have?
Hi. Oh, hi. Sorry, I couldn't find the raise my hand bit.
No worries.
On
just
Zoom.
Jump right in. It's fine.
Yeah, of course. Sarah, you're in a really wonderful spot working for the federal government. Did I get that correct? And yeah. And have you noticed or seen that LinkedIn and social media accounts are essential for getting a position within the federal government?
So they're not essential, but I use them as a research tool to like look at, who we're looking at in terms of candidates. So for my department and for my office, we have contracting positions. So in fact, if you actually look me up on LinkedIn, you'll see that one of my recent posts is like literally a job posting and opening for my office. And because the internet is so accessible and so everywhere, so what I've done is I just research the name and see what pops up. And then, sometimes I learn a little bit more about the candidate on their LinkedIn page. Or I get a chance to see their Twitter and see like, oh, this is like the kind of, messaging and interests. My video went away. I don't know what happened. These are like the kind of messages or interests they have. So it's not necessary. And in fact, I have a good work colleague who refuses to have any social media presence at all whatsoever. And like, good for him, like he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. But I know that I'm personally not like networking used to feel like this very big and awful thing that I had to do. And LinkedIn has allowed me to just provide a summary of myself and just connect with others in a very kind of natural way, where people are like, oh, you work in Latin America? Like, can I talk to you about like my work in similar space? So it's helped with networking. Twitter, I'm like, I just don't have the time, and it's not important. But I know some of my colleagues are, and like they have like a beautifully curated Twitter with like lots of information. I go to their spaces to like check up on what they're working on professionally and try to connect dots and people. So
that's really good to know that at least that people who are in a hiring position use that as a resource. So it's, at that point when you just saying that means it's essential, even if they don't.
Yeah. I mean, and if you don't have like a LinkedIn profile, like, no one's going to be like, Jean is not on LinkedIn. Like, she's not a serious professional. Like, that's like never going to happen. So I'm going to say, if you choose to have one, have it updated, because there's nothing sadder than like something that hasn't been updated since 2003. I'm like, you just
Mine.
like, I graduated from high school. So use it as like, don't be afraid. Use it as an opportunity to dedicate time to yourself and to putting down on paper all of your achievements, so that when that moment comes and you have an opportunity to share something about yourself with somebody else, you can say like, hey, I can send you my resume CV, or like, look me up on LinkedIn, I'm here. And then somebody can quickly just get a sense for who you are and say, okay, she's like a huge like mushroom fan, and I just need somebody who works in like mushrooms to help me with like whatever. So yeah, just kind of get your professional branding like in order.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that feedback.
Mhm.
And I don't want to take up any more time from anyone else. Can I ask one more
I mean,
question?
Sure, yeah. I don't see any other questions, so feel free. Go ahead, Jean.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, what's really struck me looking at the LinkedIn profiles of, say, I want to work for NASA eventually, so I've been skulking around finding NASA engineers, and it seems like they have the same background, the same wording. Is that something that comes across just naturally because of the people who are in that position realize, oh yeah, I have to put in this specific terminology, or
yeah, it's not even that like you have to put it in, but I mean, just like I can be dead asleep, and if you like wake me up at like 3 a.m. and are like, what do you work on? I can like, it just comes out like a reflex. And the way that like federal government works, we have specific ways that we talk about our work. We have specific language, but like much like any research lab would. And so it becomes like an organic way for us to phrase our work. And I think if you were to look at other of like my colleagues and my team, they're like LinkedIn, it's like a permutation of the words that I have, but in different order, and like just sub in different countries. And not because we've coordinated it, but because that's just those are like the terms of art. So also if you want to work in NASA in a specific space, I think what you're doing is fantastic. I mean, there is something kind of like knowing the culture of where you're going and trying to kind of like mirror that. So if you can maybe use, adapt the language that you have on your LinkedIn, page or resume or professional profile to describe it in that way, it's like people will be like, oh, she's one of us. Like, yeah, let's
one of us. Excellent.
come in. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. It was more of like a leading question than an actual question. So
no,
I appreciate it.
I'm here to talk all day about professional stuff, but I know Jillian has like, other things that she has to do too.
Oh, sorry. I really appreciate it, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh no, it's totally okay. We still have a couple of minutes left, so if there's maybe one more question that anyone would like to ask before we close, this would be the time. Any additional questions? Okay, so I'll keep an eye on the chat and the participant list if anyone has an additional question, but just a couple of closing comments. First of all, thank you again, Sarah. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and agreeing to participate in our speaker series today. And I want to thank our participants as well for joining us for our last session of this this speaker series that we have just launched for the first time this academic year, and we plan to continue in future academic years. I will actually be part of a team that's going to be transitioning the Alumni Speaker Series, as well as the Alumni Mentoring Program, and into making it more institutionalized, as well as scaling the program up. So, please look forward to more opportunities like this in the future. Before I let everyone go, Sarah, did you want to leave anyone with any final comments or commentary about professional profiles or anything else you would like to share before we go?
So many things, but I think for professional profiles and for just anything else, when you're in grad school, I get it, you're busy, you have tons of classes and you have tons of commitments and you're trying to take care of yourself, and but a professional, just like your professional career and trajectory, that requires care and feeding, and it requires time. So even if you're years out from graduating and looking for a job, just invest some time in working on that and working on a resume or a professional profile, or like if your hope is to have a LinkedIn page, go ahead and do that. So have some goals for yourself. It's much like anything else, much like working slowly and chipping away at your graduate program. Start working on that early. Then that starts like prompting more questions of like, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to like get to after I graduate? And share your work with others. It's amazing how much we can just get in our head and we put something down and we think it's great, and then we send it out, and like you pick it up later and you're like, oh my gosh, this cover letter is awful, or like this resume is like, oh, this is like doesn't reflect who I am, And so if you have an opportunity to share your work with other people, they can give you feedback. So invest the time and ask those around you, the collective brain, to help you with your efforts.
Thank you. And I'm just dropping a link again that I shared earlier to the Tuesday Talks website. You'll be able to access all of the recordings there. Some of them are already available. The last few just need some time to get uploaded. And just as a reminder for all of our students on the call, so that's graduate students, undergraduate students, professional students, we have a door prize raffle that we're doing for all of the sessions. And so we'll be drawing 5 names for $50 Visa gift cards, and winners will be contacted directly. And I'll also be sending an email out to everyone with an evaluation for this session as well as the entire series. So thank you again. I'll stick around for a minute or two if anyone has any additional questions, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you again, Sarah.
No, thank you, Jillian. Take care. Bye, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.